殺されたのよ。それも一瞬のうちにな。たった7人に。
Hey guys, welcome to my SOFHAB review series. This time, I'll be covering the anime The Seven Deadly Sins exclusively on Netflix. And joining me once again is Rascal Entertainment.
Yes, hello.
Now this Netflix series follows Princess Elizabeth as she searches for the legendary but outlawed knights known as the Seven Deadly Sins in order to stop a great evil that's taken over her kingdom. But
before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, put notification updates on future reviews, hacks, spoofs, and more.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. And for joining us for this particular review, because this series has actually been on since 2014, not consecutively. It's had gaps in the actual airing. The first season premiered October 2014, ran 24 episodes. Then it was a special that was 4 episodes that premiered in August of 2016.
Right.
Second season did not come out until January of 2018, 24 episodes as well. Third season premiered October 2019, 24 episodes. Then we had the COVID event, so the 4th season did not premiere until January of 2021, almost 3 years later, with another 24 episodes. There have been movies attached to this.
Yes.
So we finally sat down and actually watched this series.
Yes.
We started some time ago and been going back and forth and watching.
Right. And it was a little weird to start it off with because we know that the track record for the Netflix anime is that they usually have more misses than hits. When they have a hit, it's usually really great and they don't bring it back. And when they have a miss, no one really talks about it. So for a week like the initial sometimes 7DS, not to be confused with like a Nintendo game, we weren't sure what to expect. It had a lot of voice actors we know in it. Looks like it had a unique animation style.
And the only reason I wanted to see it in the beginning was because of Bryce Papenbrook.
Right. And it was actually an interesting concept with having the Seven Deadly Sins be more of the anti-hero or going on redemption arc type thing with this rather than having them be the villains like you would know them the most like in Fullmetal Alchemist.
And this series is actually based on a fantasy manga of the same name. It was written and illustrated by Nakaba Suzuki. So this actually has a manga which we haven't read. And unlike a lot of other animes, the same person who wrote and illustrated the manga is also writing a script play and the animation for the anime as well.
Right. So that means that the mangaka is in charge of the whole story entirely. There's no additions, changing the story, cutting things out, or anything unless they have to say so. And for here, it kind of starts off a little slow, a little strange, and it starts to pick up as the show goes on. And each of the knights are a different representation of one of the sins. And of course, you already know the 7 with pride, lust, greed, sloth, and you know and the rest.
Just like if you know the homunculi from Fullmetal Alchemist, it's the same thing.
Right. So they probably play with the same thing, but have them be sort of being the underdog heroes in here. And ironically enough, there's a point where they have later on where they have their enemies, and you could say this is unique. Their enemies are the 10 Commandments. And it's like, well, I can say that's never been done before. They came with something really different. However, when you look at it, it's kind of saying something pretty weird depending on how you look at it or how you take it as fictitious.
Right, and I think it's meant to be, as you said, something different and creative. And it is.
Right, because no one's done personification of commandments, just of the sins. So that was actually something really different.
And to look forward to if we continue to watch it.
Right.
Now, as we mentioned, Bryce Papenbrook is the MC of this anime.
Right.
He's Meliodas, the voice of Meliodas.
Right.
And he's off-putting because he's the leader of the 7DS, which we normally call them. And he's very short. He actually looks like a child. He's blonde, blue-eyed, very slight of build, but he's the most powerful.
Right.
And no one expects him to be the leader or him to even have the powers and abilities that he has.
That's why they're surprised when they start fighting him. And it's like, he can do so much in just one or two hits. Someone can be just thrown across the land.
Now, he's the opposite of Kurito. And I wanted to mention that because Bryce Papenbrook voicing Kurito, the character's gotten a lot of flack because they call him Gary Sue.
Yeah.
I just think he's a great character, and the character's gotten a lot of flack. So it looks like Bryce Papenbrook said, you know what, I'm going to do the flip side of this. I'm going to voice this character, Meliodas, one of the 70S, because Meliodas is the total opposite of Kurito. He's licentious. He's always feeling Elizabeth's butt.
It's like Moroku.
Filling up her skirt, telling her she needs to wear panties.
Oh,
all sorts of weird things.
And the his pig, Hockey's calling him out saying, why are you doing this? And he doesn't hide it. He's not embarrassed.
No.
I think he's been around so much that it doesn't really affect him anymore. If they tell him to stop, then he'll stop. But he just does it nonchalantly, like it's just some normal thing for him, and then keeps going.
And I'm glad you mentioned it, because just like the Sins, they are thousands of years old, hundreds and thousands of years old, depending on the character. And again, he's off-putting, and you don't expect him to be the leader or powerful. Then you've got Ban, who tends to be a lot of people's favorites, and he's Greed.
Greed is usually a favorite.
He's got on this bright red suit
that doesn't
fit,
with
a jacket and pants like he's 80s throwover from Michael Jackson.
And he doesn't, none of the clothes fit. It's
he's
like
good looking, but he's really arrogant, and he's also powerful. People expect him to something to be wrong with him because of the way he behaves. But he ends up being loyal to them and trustworthy later on. In the beginning, you don't know, especially when they find him, and they say they come to release him. He's like, I was going to get on my own anyway. It's and you mentioned the pig.
Yeah, Hawk.
And
when she speaks, it's absolutely hilarious.
And she eats a lot. Of
course. And it's like, no problem. And they ride around on her mother, and there's a little restaurant / house on top of it, and they travel along on her back. So the three of them pretty much travel all across different lands. Either they sell food, so they have money to buy food, or they
need to learn from them.
And then, as the show goes on, you start seeing the other characters come into play, like with King and
yeah, King can take two forms. He can be an adult who looks like the Ben 10 reboot of Ben, or he looks like a child. And he seems to be conflicted in his decisions and what he does.
Because he has a grudge against Bond for a while, as you find out when you watch the show.
And he's in love with Diane, who's another character who's like a titan, not like Attack of the Titans.
No, she's gigantic.
And she wears this little one-piece unitard with sleeves and two ponytails, and in the beginning she's in love with Meliodas. But it's not mutual. He's in love with Elizabeth.
Of course, If you know you already see one of the new movies come up, you know where it's gonna go with them.
And you see by the end of the first season that when she gets an opportunity, that someone puts a spell so that she can be normal size, and King wants to go out with her, she actually accepts. And you're surprised. Because I guess she's finally getting through her head. He's done all this for this woman. He doesn't want me. Let me move on. So that's good that she's...
Which is a change, because usually in anime, these people never get over the first crush or first one in love with, and they go to the grave still in love with them. So it was nice to see a change where she's actually moving on to a different person and trying something else.
Absolutely. And then you have... we did mention Diane. And
there's one more. You're right.
Her ability is tall.
And
then toward the end of the season, we meet a pink-haired character.
Yeah, it's supposed to be Lust, who's actually male in here, but looks, I guess, sort of androgynous. So you kind of mistake him for female every now and then. They still say he, so it's not like a translation or anything. Which is another unique thing, because Lust is usually female. So it was actually unique to see Lust be a male this time, but I guess he was differently drawn out people expect, but they still leaned towards what you usually compare the word with.
So we didn't mention quickly that this takes place in a setting similar to the European Middle Ages. And so you've got the same type of clothing and the setting and the castles and all these things going on. It's not in modern day. And they're pretty accurate in representing it in the anime.
And, oh, there's one little thing left I want to mention because of something I thought that was funny. Throughout the season, you start meeting the different characters. Sometimes they're the knights, and sometimes they're the people that know the knights.
Right.
And it seems to be a running gag that a lot of these characters have, like, short-term memory loss or something, because somebody will come at them with a grudge or a vengeance, and they say, you remember me? You did so-and-so to me 20 years ago. And it's like, I don't know who the hell you are. It's like, what do you mean you don't remember? That was, like, ages ago. And then they would have fights over it. And it's like, you don't know who the heck they are, but he's still gonna fight them. And it's like, why are they so jogging memory? And he beat the heck out of them. And they're like, oh, now I remember. That was like, now I'm gonna kick you behind. It's like a running gag with everyone beating up each other, and one does not remember the other.
Absolutely. So Elizabeth ends up meeting up with the 7DS because she's actually looking for them to help save her kingdom.
Yes.
And she meets them in the Boar Hat Tavern, which
That's the
Meliodas
name of it.
owns.
That's the name of it.
And
Yep.
as you said, with Hawk the Pig talking, and she doesn't know who he is when she meets him.
Right.
And for the first few episodes, it's really silliness and fun ensuing. And you get to one of the episodes where it gets serious, where you know it's not a joke, and
Right.
things start happening. I personally think it's a great balance of fun and seriousness. It's an adventure fantasy genre,
which you don't see a lot of now, the mixture of genres.
and for what we understand, this is Netflix's most popular anime.
Right.
And you were telling me that they're going to have a 5th season come out. But
Right.
there's some changes to the 5th season that
Right.
people probably aren't going to be happy with.
Right, because they're having a new movie come out, and they went from the 2D to 3D animation, and forgive me, it looks horrible. They all look wrong. All the characters look really off. It's supposed to be set years after the show. It doesn't look like the same character. The new characters look off kilter and not in a good way. It doesn't even seem like you're watching the same universe anymore. And looking at it is so jarring, just looking at how awful they look. I'm sorry. That I think this is pulling a lot of people away from even going back to it for the ones that did watch it, because it just, like, you can't stop. You have to look at it to watch it, and it's like, you don't even want to look at the screen. It looks just bad.
Yeah.
So we're going to see if this is going to continue, because it's an original story the creator made to continue it. We're going to see if this is even big enough to keep the story going, or is it going to be finished after this 3rd film.
Absolutely. So if you've seen the 7 Deadly Sins, let us know what you think in the comments below. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Is it meh? Have you watched it from the beginning, the entire series, or did you just tune in for a few seasons? Let us know what you think in the comments below. If you haven't seen it, it's available on Netflix to stream. And if you haven't watched it, we really think you should really check out at least the 1st season. It is good, and after that, decide if you want to stick with it or not.
Right, because it does end on a cliffhanger. And be sure to like, subscribe, click notification buttons on upcoming reviews, spoofs, hacks, tips, and more.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for joining me again.
Yes, of course.
We hope you've enjoyed this review, and if you have anything you want us to check out, let us know in the comments as well.
Yes.
So
So,
thank you for watching.
I'm Rask Entertainments.
I'm Julie.
Have a fantastic day.
Continue to be happy, healthy, and whole. See you next time.